I never expected him to go that far, and at first it hurt. But by the time we were done, I loved every moment of it. I never really thought about being gay. Not seriously, anyway. I knew what it was, knew that some people just were, but it never felt like something that applied to me. I had crushes on girls, or at least I thought I did. I figured I'd grow up, date, get married, just like everyone else. Then my cousin changed everything. He's 30, a doctor. The kind of guy everyone in the family looks up to. Smart, successful, good-looking in that effortless way that some people just are. I always admired him, always wanted to impress him, but I never thought about him in any kind of different way. Not until the night he made me question everything. It happened at a family gathering, one of those big summer barbecues where everyone eats too much, the adults drink too much, and the kids run around until they pass out on the grass. I was somewhere in between, not a kid anymore, but not really one of the adults either. I had just graduated high school, still figuring out what came next. Late that night, after most of the family had gone to bed, we were sitting outside on the back porch, just me and him. The air was warm, the cicadas loud, and the beer he handed me was cold. "You're old enough now," he said with a smirk, clinking his bottle against mine. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I wasn't about to say no. I took a sip, letting the alcohol burn its way down. He watched me, his eyes lingering longer than I was used to. "You've grown up a lot," he said after a while. "You're not that little kid I remember." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten, though I didn't know why. I laughed it off, said something dumb about how time works. Then out of nowhere, he reached over and brushed my hair back. It was a small gesture, but it felt different. "You ever think about guys?" he asked, his voice casual. Too casual. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. My brain scrambling to process what he just said. "What?" I finally managed. He smirked, tilting his head slightly. "I see the way you look at me." I couldn't breathe. Had I looked at him in some way? Had I given something away without realizing it? I don't, I stammered. He chuckled, leaning in just a little closer. "Relax. It's not a bad thing." The way he said it, so smooth, so confident, it made something shift inside me. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he looked at me, like he knew something about me that I hadn't even figured out yet. I should have said something. Stood up, walked away, laughed it off. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at him, feeling something I'd never felt before. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't who I thought I was. The days after that night felt different. I couldn't stop replaying it in my head, dissecting every word, every glance, every small touch. Had I imagined the whole thing? Was I reading too much into it? Or worse, was he just messing with me? I told myself it was nothing, that it didn't mean anything. But if that was true, why couldn't I let it go? We didn't talk about it at first. At the next family gathering, he acted normal, laughing with my uncles, playing with my younger cousins, making small talk with my mom. But every once in a while, I caught him looking at me, just a second too long, just enough to send my heart racing. Then one night he texted me, "Hey, you want to hang out?" I stared at the screen for way too long before responding. "Yeah, sure." We met up at his place, his apartment downtown, way nicer than anywhere I'd ever been. He ordered takeout, poured me a drink, and we sat on his couch watching some movie neither of us paid attention to. At first, it was just talking. Jokes, stories, catching up. But then the conversation shifted. "You ever figure out an answer?" he asked casually. "To what?" His smirk returned. "To my question the other night." My stomach flipped. "I don't know." "That's an answer." He took a slow sip of his drink. "You ever think about finding out?" My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't sure if it was nerves, excitement, or both. "Maybe," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned in slightly, not pushing, just close enough to let me decide. And in that moment, I knew, whatever happened next, I wouldn't be the same after. I avoided him for weeks after that night, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't trust myself. I told myself I needed space, that I had to figure things out on my own. But the truth was, I was terrified of what would happen if I saw him again. Would he expect something from me? Would I want him to? And worst of all, what if I did? Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach clenched. I'd see his name on the screen, and my thumb would hover over the message. But I never responded. Then one afternoon, I ran into him by accident, at a coffee shop of all places. He saw me before I could turn away. "You avoiding me?" he asked, his expression unreadable. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because yes, I was, but also, no, I wasn't. Not really. "Sit with me," he said. And for some reason, I did. Sitting across from him at that small coffee shop table, I felt like my entire world was balancing on the edge of something unknown. I'd spent weeks trying to push this whole thing out of my head, convincing myself that I was overthinking, that I was just confused. But the second I sat down, all of it came rushing back. The way he looked at me, the way my heart reacted before my brain even had time to catch up. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. "You want to tell me what's going on?" I swallowed hard, stirring the coffee I wasn't even planning to drink. "Nothing's going on." His smirk was small but knowing. Could have fooled me. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I needed time to think. "About what?" I hesitated, looking anywhere but at him. "You know what?" He nodded, taking a slow sip. And I wanted to tell him that I'd figured it out, that I knew exactly what I wanted, that it all made sense now. But the words wouldn't come, because that wasn't the truth. The truth was, I was still scared. Scared of what this meant, of what it said about me. "Look," he said, setting his cup down, his voice softer now. "I get it. This is new for you." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Yeah. And maybe you're still figuring things out." "Yeah." A small smile played at his lips. "That's okay, you know." I frowned. "Is it?" His expression turned serious, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Something softer, more understanding. "Of course it is. You don't have to have all the answers right now." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "But what if I never do?" He shrugged. "Then you don't. Life's not about having everything figured out. It's about finding the moments that feel right and going from there. The moments that feel right." I thought about the night on his couch, the way he looked at me, the way my body had responded before my mind could argue. That moment had felt right. I just didn't know if I was ready to admit it. He must have seen something shift in my expression, because his smile returned, smaller this time, almost hesitant. "You don't have to decide anything today. Just let yourself feel whatever you're feeling. See where it takes you." I nodded slowly. See where it takes me. Maybe, just maybe, I could do that. It felt like I was living in a haze for the next few days. Every time I saw him, I was hyper-aware of everything. His voice, his touch, the way he looked at me. But at the same time, I was trying to convince myself that nothing had changed, that I wasn't feeling things I didn't understand. But the truth was, I was struggling to ignore the pull toward him, like an invisible thread pulling me closer despite my better judgment. The day after that coffee shop conversation, I decided I needed space. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to talk to him. I told myself it was too much too soon. I had a life to figure out, things to work through, and this, whatever this was, had no place in it. But then I got a text. "You still avoiding me?" My heart skipped when I saw his name. I stared at the screen, biting my lip, thinking about ignoring it, but I couldn't. No. A minute passed, and then another message popped up. "You sure?" I couldn't tell if he was teasing or genuinely concerned, but my pulse quickened anyway. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. I've just been busy. Haven't had time to think about things. There, that seemed safe. But even as I typed it, I knew it was a lie. I was thinking about him every second. I was thinking about us. His reply came almost instantly. "We need to talk. Come over tonight." My stomach dropped. The casualness of his request made it feel even more intense, like he was already expecting something I wasn't sure I could give. but there was no way out. I was already too deep. Okay, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know if I was ready for what came next, but I knew I had to face it. I had to stop running. That night, I drove to his place, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. My mind was racing, thinking, second-guessing, overthinking every single thing. The whole drive, I could barely breathe. When I got to his apartment, he was already waiting for me by the door. His eyes softened when he saw me, and I suddenly felt exposed, like he could read all the confusion and fear written all over me. "You came," he said, stepping aside to let me in. His voice was warm, welcoming. It didn't match the storm I felt inside. I nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't know what else to do. He smiled, like he understood everything without me saying it out loud. "Just relax," he said, leading me to the couch. "No pressure. We'll figure this out." I sat down, my legs feeling like jelly. "I don't even know what I'm doing," I admitted, my voice shaky. He sat next to me, but not too close, just enough to remind me he was there. "You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. You're being honest with yourself. You came here, didn't you?" I nodded again, my throat dry. "But I'm scared." He reached over, his hand brushing mine, and for a moment, I froze. That simple touch sent a rush of heat through my body. It was like everything I had been trying to avoid came crashing back in an instant. "I know," he said softly, his thumb rubbing over my knuckles. "But you don't have to be scared. Not with me." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But every instinct in me screamed to pull away. I wasn't sure if it was a fear of the unknown, or the fear of actually admitting what was happening. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered, looking down at our hands. "I don't know what this means." His fingers tightened slightly around mine, as if to reassure me. "It doesn't mean anything unless you want it to. You get to decide. All of this, it's in your hands." For a moment, the silence stretched between us, thick with everything unsaid. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us in that quiet space. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to run. But at the same time, I couldn't deny the part of me that was drawn to him, drawn to whatever this was. He leaned in slightly, his breath warm against my ear. "Tell me what you want." My heart hammered in my chest. I knew what I wanted, but I was too scared to admit it, too scared of what it meant, of what it said about me. "I don't know," I whispered. "You don't have to know everything," he said. "Just tell me what you feel." I closed my eyes, trying to block out the noise in my head. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself listen to what my heart was saying. "I think I want this," I said, barely able to breathe the words. And when I looked into his eyes, I knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. The room felt too small, too close. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, a constant drum that wouldn't stop. We were sitting there, just the two of us, on his couch. The soft hum of the city outside barely reached us. It was like we were in our own world, disconnected from everything else. He had been talking about something I couldn't quite focus on, but I was barely listening. I was too caught up in the moment, in the heat building between us. My body was hyper-aware of him. The way he sat just a little too close, the way his hand brushed mine again, that small gesture that sent an electric current through my skin. I couldn't help it. I wanted more. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said, his voice quiet, almost like he was testing me. His eyes locked on mine, an intensity in them that made my breath catch. "I thought you might keep running." I whispered, my voice almost lost in space between us. He smiled, but it wasn't the carefree smile I was used to. This one was different, slow, deliberate, like he was savoring something. It made my stomach flip, and I couldn't look away. His hand moved then, shifting closer to mine on the couch. I felt it before I saw it. His fingers brushed the side of my knee, a light touch, but enough to make my skin burn. I froze, my breath hitching in my chest. I didn't know how to react. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, but still carrying that underlying tension. I nodded, even though my mind was racing. Was this really happening? I couldn't believe it. His hand lingered on my knee, just sitting there, but it felt like everything had shifted. It felt too intimate, too dangerous. His fingers moved again, just barely tracing over my skin. A slow, deliberate motion that left a trail of heat in its wake. I could feel the weight of his gaze, like it was pressing against me, pulling me in. I should have stopped him. I should have stood up, left the room, told him this was wrong, told him I couldn't do this. But instead, I sat there, frozen, my body betraying me. I didn't know what I wanted, but what I did know was that I couldn't just ignore the way I felt. I couldn't ignore the way my body reacted to him, the way his touch made my chest tighten and my pulse race. His hand on my knee felt like it was burning through my clothes, through my skin. Every second that passed felt like a slow unraveling. I couldn't stop myself from leaning in slightly, the air between us thick with tension. "You're still here," he said, his voice almost a whisper now. "Still thinking about running?" I shook my head, though I wasn't sure if I was talking about leaving or about him. I didn't know anymore. I was too far gone, caught in a web of confusion, desire, and guilt. And then, without warning, he moved closer. His hand on my knee shifted upward, his fingers curling around my thigh. I couldn't breathe. My body tensed. But I couldn't pull away. It was like my body had betrayed me, pulling me toward him even though my mind screamed to stop. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, "and I will." I couldn't say anything. I couldn't speak, couldn't find the words to stop this. Whatever this was, I was trapped between wanting him to stop and wanting him to keep going. The tension in the room grew unbearable, thick enough that I could almost taste it. I could feel his hand sliding higher, and something inside me snapped. In that moment, I knew. I couldn't believe I was letting this happen. I couldn't believe I was letting him touch me like this. His lips were on my neck before I even realized it. The pressure of his body against mine sent a shock through me, and for a second, I was lost in the feeling. But then the reality of the situation hit me, like a cold wave. I couldn't believe I was doing this. I couldn't believe this was happening between us. "Stop," I gasped, my voice shaky. My hands were gripping the edge of the couch, knuckles white. I wanted to pull away, but my body didn't want to listen. I wanted to push him off me, tell him this was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. He froze, his breath coming in shallow bursts against my skin. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between us, thick and suffocating. My chest was heaving, and I couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low and strained. His hand fell away from my thigh, but the damage had already been done. I could feel the imprint of his touch still burning on my skin. I stood up quickly, the need to escape overwhelming me. My legs were shaky as I backed away from him. I shouldn't have come here," I said, my voice cracking as I stumbled toward the door. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't say anything else. He just watched me, his eyes dark, and I couldn't tell if he was ashamed or regretful, or if he was just as confused as I was. I left without another word, my mind in a complete fog. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Couldn't believe I'd let it happen. I was disgusted with myself, with everything that had just transpired. But deep down, I knew I'd never be able to forget it. I'd never be able to forget the way his hand had felt on my skin, the way my body had betrayed me. I just didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The hours after were a blur. His touch, the way my body had responded, everything about that moment felt surreal. I had never once imagined I'd be in that situation, especially not with him. But there I was, sitting on the couch, trying to convince myself that I hadn't just crossed a line I could never come back from. The room was still, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, each beat a reminder of what had just occurred. He sat next to me, close but not touching, his hand resting on the back of the couch like it belonged there. His presence was comforting, yet unsettling. He didn't look at me the way he had before, with that confident, almost knowing gaze. Now, his eyes were softer, almost vulnerable. Neither of us spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he broke the silence. "Are you okay?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. My emotions were a mess, shame, guilt, confusion, but also something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. There was a part of me that felt alive in a way I'd never experienced. But the other part of me screamed that what had just happened was wrong, that it shouldn't have gone that far. Yeah, I said, my voice cracking. I think so. I didn't expect this. Any of it. He nodded, his expression serious now. I didn't mean to push you into anything. He paused, as if trying to find the right words. I don't want you to regret it. Regret. That was the word that hit me hardest. Regret. Because I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake. But at the same time, there was a part of me that didn't feel that way. A part of me that wanted to believe it wasn't as wrong as it felt. I couldn't look at him. Instead, I stared at my hands, twisted together in my lap. I don't know what to think. Neither do I, he admitted softly. But I'm not going anywhere. If you want to talk, or if you need time, whatever you need. His words were reassuring in a way, but they didn't quiet the storm inside me. I needed space to figure this out. I needed time to understand why it felt so right in the moment, but so wrong afterward. I think I just need to sleep on it, I said quietly, finally looking up at him. His eyes softened again, but there was no judgment there. No condemnation. Just understanding. I get it, he said, his voice low and steady. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. I stood up, my legs shaky beneath me, and made my way to the door. Before I left, I turned back to face him, my heart heavy with uncertainty. I'm sorry, I whispered, unsure what I was apologizing for, whether it was for the actions we just shared or for confusion that was now consuming me. He gave me a small, understanding smile. You don't have to apologize. Just be honest with yourself. And with that, I left. The night was silent as I made my way home. My mind raced with questions about who I was, what I had done, and what it meant for my future. I knew that things had changed. That moment would hang over me, no matter how much I tried to push it away. But as I crawled into bed that night, I realized something. The guilt was there, yes, but there was also something else, something deeper and more complicated. I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew I couldn't go back to how things were before. Whatever came next, I would have to face it, one way or another. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I kept replaying everything in my mind, trying to make sense of what had happened, what I had allowed to happen. But no matter how many times I ran the scenario over and over, I couldn't escape the feeling of confusion and disbelief. It was the weekend again when he asked me in a way that made my heart race and my stomach churn with a mix of anticipation and dread. Do you want to go all the way? He asked, his voice quiet but direct. I wasn't prepared for that question. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. All the uncertainty I had felt about our last encounter flooded back, and I had no idea how to respond. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My mind was scrambling. I had never imagined we would get to this point. I never thought I'd be in this position, faced with such an important decision. But before I could talk myself out of it, before I could think of all the reasons I should walk away, the words slipped out of my mouth. Okay. He paused, looking at me like he wasn't sure if I was serious. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the uncertainty mirrored in my own. You sure? He asked softly. I nodded, though inside I was anything but sure. But there was a pull inside me, something I couldn't explain, something that pushed me forward. Maybe it was a curiosity. Maybe it was a confusion. Maybe it was just a desire to feel close to him in a way I had never felt before. We didn't speak much after that. Words weren't necessary. The air between us shifted as we moved closer, and for a moment, everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. Afterward, as I lay there, the weight of what had just occurred pressed down on me. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. I couldn't believe what I had just done. How could I have gone this far? How could I have crossed that line with him? But as I lay there, looking at him, I realized something. I wasn't just questioning what had happened. I was questioning everything. Who I was, what I wanted, what this relationship meant, not just to me, but to him, too. I had done something I never thought I would, and now there was no going back. The question wasn't just about regret. It was about figuring out what came next. The silence was thick, the weight of everything hanging in the air between us. For the first time since this all started, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if there was anything I could say. Finally, he spoke, breaking the tension. "I didn't mean to complicate things," he said, his voice low. "I don't know if you did." I replied quietly. "I think I made the choice too." And with that, the conversation ended. Neither of us knew where to go from here. The truth was, neither of us could change what had just happened. All we could do was face the consequences, whatever they might be. In the weeks that followed, things between my cousin and me became something we couldn't ignore. What started as a confusing and unexpected encounter turned into something we couldn't deny. Whenever we could sneak away, we found ourselves falling back into the same rhythm. The connection we shared felt different. Maybe it was the intensity of the situation, or maybe it was just the chaos of emotions we both couldn't quite understand. We didn't talk much about it, but every time we got together, the unspoken understanding was there. It was strange, but it was also thrilling. For the first time in my life, I felt a rush of excitement every time I saw him. It was a side of myself I hadn't known existed, and I couldn't help but be drawn to it. But then everything changed. The truth had a way of coming to the surface, and no matter how hard I tried to keep it hidden, I couldn't. It was the moment I dreaded, the moment my dad found out. It wasn't like I meant for it to happen, but one evening he caught us. I wasn't sure how, but he knew. The look on his face was enough to make my heart drop. It was like time stopped. He stood in the doorway, a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief on his face. "How could you?" he demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. "How could you do this? You're cousins." I wanted to say something, but I was frozen. There was a knot in my throat, and I didn't know what to say. Everything felt so wrong, yet in some twisted way, I understood why it had happened. I could feel the weight of his words, and I didn't know how to make it make sense. "It's not like you think," I said, my voice shaky. "No one's getting hurt. We're both guys." The words hung in the air, and I knew it wasn't enough to explain what had been going on. My dad's eyes narrowed, his anger bubbling over. "You think it's just some joke," he spat. "You're related. This is wrong." I felt a mix of shame and defiance. I didn't know how to fix it, how to explain that what had happened wasn't just a mistake, but something I couldn't easily walk away from. And yet his anger, his disappointment, it made me question everything. I stood there, unsure what to do, try and make sense of what had just happened. It was impossible to ignore the way I felt. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the reality of the situation either. The lines had been crossed, and now it was something I couldn't undo. My cousin, standing next to me, said nothing. He just looked down, his face unreadable. I could feel the tension between us, the weight of the choices we had made, and it was almost suffocating. My dad finally turned away, his voice bitter as he muttered something about how this would never be right. The door slammed behind him as he walked out, leaving us standing there in the silence, unsure of where to go from here. It wasn't just the words he said that hurt. It was the weight of his disappointment. I knew he loved me, but I also knew that this was something he would never understand. And that thought, knowing how much it had shattered the trust between us, was the hardest thing of all. As the months passed, things between my cousin and I didn't go back to the way they were before. We found ourselves caught in the aftershocks of the choices we'd made, and the consequences of those choices didn't fade easily. But one thing became clear. We had something that was more than just a momentary lapse of judgment. It was a connection, a bond that, no matter how complicated, felt real. We continued seeing each other, but we learned to keep it quiet. We didn't need to explain ourselves to anyone. Not really. What we had was ours, and that was enough. We learned how to navigate our relationship with caution, knowing full well that it wasn't something the world was ready to accept. But in the quiet moments, when it was just the two of us, it felt like everything made sense. My dad never really came to terms with it. He never understood why we had chosen this path, and no amount of talking seemed to change that. It was painful seeing the divide between us. I didn't want to lose my family, but I also couldn't deny what I felt. Over time, I came to accept that there would be no way to please everyone, and that included my dad. Still, I couldn't deny that with him. With my cousin, I felt happy. For the first time in my life, I felt like I understood myself better. The uncertainty of who I was before had given way to something solid. Our relationship, as complex as it was, brought a sense of peace. And in the intimacy we shared, both emotionally and physically, there was a depth I hadn't experienced before. It wasn't perfect, but nothing ever is. What mattered most was that it felt right for us. We didn't need approval to feel content. What we had was more than just a fleeting attraction. It was a commitment to each other. And that commitment, though unconventional and misunderstood by others, was something we both cherished. In the end, what mattered wasn't what anyone else thought. It was a happiness we found in each other. And in that happiness, we built our own definition of love. It was a love that didn't need anyone's validation. We knew who we were, and we were finally at peace with it. Thank you so much for joining us here at LGBTQ+ Storytime. We appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to this story, and we hope it resonated with you in some way. Everyone's journey is unique, and sharing these stories is what helps bring understanding and connection to our community. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all of our upcoming stories and discussions. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to continue this journey together. Remember, love is love, and your story is just as important as anyone else's. Until next time, take care and be proud of who you are.